If the brain creates the mind, then where exactly is a thought? No, seriously. Not brain activity, not blood flow, not electrical spikes. A thought. Show me the shelf where your regret lives. Point to the drawer where your childhood memory of that embarrassing wave in church is stored. Mark the exact GPS coordinates of an idea. Because neuroscience can map correlates of experience, patterns associated with perception, attention, decision-making, even consciousness, but the field still wrestles with the deeper question of how physical brain processes become subjective experience at all. That gap is still one of the central live problems in both neuroscience and philosophy of mind. And that is where tonight's rabbit hole opens. Not into anti-science, not into throw away your MRI and hug a crystal. Relax. We're going somewhere much more interesting. What if the brain is real, essential, measurable, but still not the origin of mind? What if the brain is not the producer, but the instrument? What if the mind is not smoke rising from neurons, but something working through them? And if that's true, then Jesus wasn't speaking poetry when he pointed beyond the visible man. He was describing reality. Simple argument. Let's make the argument simple. Science is incredibly good at identifying what changes with mental states. You think, your brain shows activity. You remember, your brain shows activity. You fall asleep, dream, wake up, get anesthetized, get injured, focus, panic, pray, sing a math problem you were not emotionally prepared for, and yes, the brain changes with all of it. That part is not controversial. In fact, modern consciousness research is built around finding the neural correlates of consciousness, the brain processes reliably associated with conscious experience. That is a real scientific project, and it has produced real progress. But here's the question nobody should skip too fast. Does correlation equal creation? If I dent your piano, the music changes. That does not prove the piano composed Beethoven. If I smash your radio, the sound distorts. That does not prove the radio invented the broadcast. If the screen cracks, the image gets weird. That does not prove the screen authored the movie. So, when a brain injury changes language, memory, mood, or personality, that absolutely shows the brain is necessary for normal human expression. It does not automatically settle the bigger metaphysical claim that brain tissue fully generates mind in the strongest possible sense. That leap from mind depends on brain conditions to mind is nothing but brain, that leap is bigger than people pretend, much bigger. Because neurons firing is a description of mechanism, it is not yet an explanation of first-person experience. A scanner may show the networks active when you see red, but the scan is not red, the data is not redness, the map is not the experience. And that is why philosophers still call consciousness a hard problem, explaining why and how physical processes are accompanied by felt experience at all. You can measure the orchestra, you still haven't explained the song. Or to say it another way, neuroscience can often tell us when thinking is happening, sometimes where relevant processes are distributed, increasingly even what kind of content is being processed. But it still does not let you open the skull and find a glowing marble labeled mind. Because what you find is tissue, activity, chemistry, signal flow. Necessary? Very likely. Sufficient as a final explanation? That debate is not over. Go deeper into the rabbit hole. Now here is where things get wild. A brain can be described from the outside, but a mind is known from the inside. From the outside, you are electrochemical activity. From the inside, you are a world. You have meaning, intention, longing, fear, imagination, regret, hope, an inner courtroom, an inner narrator, an inner rebel, an inner witness. You don't merely process data, you live a life from within.
And science knows this is not a trivial issue. Researchers can study neural signatures, report-based paradigms, no-report paradigms, anesthesia, disorders of consciousness, and computational theories. But even with all that, distinguishing the neural basis of consciousness from related functions like attention, reporting, memory, and executive control remains methodologically difficult. That means when somebody says, consciousness is solved, it's just neurons, that is not science talking. That is swagger wearing a lab coat. Because even leading reviews in the field frame the problem as ongoing, contested, and incomplete, not closed. And here's another tension. Thought has aboutness. You can think about your mother, about tomorrow, about justice, about God, about a kingdom you cannot touch with your fingers. A neuron is not about justice. Sodium ions are not morally burdened. A synapse is not haunted by purpose. Matter moves, mind means. That does not disprove physicalism all by itself, but it does show why so many serious thinkers still treat mind as more than a cheap byproduct of chemistry. Because chemistry explains reaction, it does not obviously explain meaning, and meaning is the currency of consciousness. Counterpoints, fairly. Now, let's be fair, because if we're going to challenge the idea that the brain creates the mind, we have to honor the strongest counterarguments, and they are strong. First, brain damage can radically alter mental life. A stroke can impair language, trauma can alter personality, disease can destroy memory, electrical stimulation can trigger perceptions or disrupt them. Anesthesia can reduce responsiveness and profoundly alter the brain dynamics associated with conscious states. That is real, that matters. Second, neuroscience can increasingly decode aspects of mental content from brain activity. Not perfectly, not like sci-fi mind reading, but enough to show a deep relationship between mental states and neural states. Third, if you shut down key brain systems, conscious access can disappear, or at least become severely altered. Anesthesia research, sleep science, and disorders of consciousness work all support the idea that ordinary human consciousness is tightly linked to large-scale brain dynamics. So, let's not do fake drama. The evidence does not say the brain is irrelevant. It screams the opposite. The brain matters enormously. But here is the hinge. Dependence is not identity. The fact that your earthly expression of mind depends on a functioning brain does not prove the brain is the ultimate source of mind, no more than damaged lenses prove the eye invented light. What the evidence strongly supports is this: the brain is deeply involved in how consciousness is manifested, structured, limited, disrupted, and expressed in embodied human life. What remains debated is whether that fully explains consciousness itself. That is the honest position. Not denial, not reductionist chest beating. Honesty. And honesty is rarer than fMRI images on YouTube thumbnails. The turn. So, if the brain does not fully explain the mind, what are we looking at? Scripture gives a category modern people often flatten: the inner man. Not the fake public self, not the algorithm self, not the curated selfie with the caption "grateful." The inner man, the unseen center, the seat of intention, the place where belief, desire, conscience, imagination, and allegiance gather. The Bible speaks as if the deepest driver of human life is not the body leading the person, but the inward person shaping the body's direction. That does not mean your brain isn't important. It means your brain may be the biological interface of a deeper self, not the author of that self. The kingdom frame says this: you are not merely a machine that accidentally became self-aware. You are an inward being living through a body in a material world under spiritual realities. That's why two people can have similar biology and wildly different inner worlds. That's why information alone does not transform a person. That's why the battle is not merely in the skull, but in the heart, the mind, the will. And suddenly, the old biblical language stops sounding primitive. It starts sounding diagnostic. Because the deepest human crisis is not lack of neurons, it is misaligned inner rule. Kingdom, inner man leads. Jesus did not come mainly to upgrade your opinions. He came announcing a kingdom, a government, a rule, an order. And the first territory that kingdom confronts is not Rome, Washington, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, or your weird cousin's podcast channel. It's you, your inner man. Because if the inner man is real, then life is not transformed by changing information alone. Life changes when rulership changes, when truth takes the throne, when the spirit of a man comes under the government of God, when the inward life stops being dragged around by fear,
Lust, pride, offense, vanity, and old patterns. That is why the kingdom is not behavior paint. It is inward government. And that is why a person can look calm outside and be collapsing inside, or look ordinary outside and be carrying a world of authority inside. The outer man displays, the inner man decides. The outer man reacts, the inner man rules or gets ruled. So the question is not just, where is mind in the brain? The deeper question is, who is governing your inner world? Because whatever rules the inner man will eventually write its laws into speech, habits, relationships, attention, appetite, and destiny. Practice. Renew the mind. Now let's get practical. If the mind is not just brain output, then renewing the mind is not merely stuffing your head with facts like a theological USB drive. To renew the mind is to retrain the inner world under truth, to bring thought under government, to stop treating every thought as your identity. Because every thought that passes through your awareness is not a throne candidate. Some thoughts are noise, some are wounds talking, some are fear rehearsing fiction, some are temptation wearing your voice like a Halloween costume. Renewing the mind means learning to say, that thought appeared in me, but it is not automatically from me, and it certainly is not automatically lord over me. That is freedom. So how do you practice this? You slow down. You observe your thought life instead of becoming every thought you think. You feed on truth consistently, not randomly. You pray not as performance, but as reordering. You reject internal chaos as normal. You align imagination with what is righteous, pure, and true. You stop calling mental clutter personality. And day by day, the inner man becomes clearer, stronger, more governed, more alive. Not because you became less embodied, but because your inner life stopped living like a runaway kingdom. So, does the brain matter? Absolutely. Can science study consciousness? Yes, and it should. Has neuroscience revealed astonishing relationships between brain activity and experience? Without question. But has anyone finally shown that matter alone explains mind, that neurons fully account for subjectivity, meaning, interiority, and the lived fact of being you? No. Not even close enough to close the case. So maybe the brain is not the factory of mind. Maybe it is the earthly instrument of a deeper person. Maybe the mind is not a ghost in the machine. Maybe the machine was never the king. Maybe the inner man is real. And maybe that uneasy feeling you get when reductionist explanations sound too small for human life. Maybe that feeling is not ignorance. Maybe it is recognition, because you know deep down that you are more than circuitry. You are not just activity, not just chemistry, not just reactions. You are a being meant to come under righteous rule. And until the inner man is rightly governed, no amount of outer knowledge will make the soul whole. If this stirred something in you,
comment mind below. And if you want the next one, I'll do, if thoughts aren't you, then who are you? Subscribe, and let's keep going deeper, with a trail this time.